Japan entered World War II with tanks built for speed and mobility, not heavy armor. While other nations raced toward thicker steel and bigger guns, Japanese designers shaped their tanks for jungle warfare and infantry support. First one is Type 89 Igo. The Type 89 Igo was where Japanese armored warfare truly began. Designed in the late 1920s, this was Japan's first domestically produced medium tank, built for one main purpose: supporting infantry advances. It wasn't fast and it wasn't heavily armored, but it didn't need to be. In China and Manchuria, the Type 89 faced poorly equipped opponents, and in that environment it worked. What made it unusual was its diesel engine, a smart choice that reduced fire risk and improved reliability in hot climates. Its low-velocity gun was effective against infantry and field fortifications, but completely unsuited for tank combat. By the time World War II began, the Type 89 was already obsolete, yet Japan continued to use it out of necessity. The Igo represents Japan's early belief that tanks were tools of infantry, not independent battlefield weapons. Type 95 Hago. The Type 95 Hago became the backbone of Japan's armored forces. Lightweight, mechanically simple and highly mobile, it was designed to operate in jungles, rough terrain and poor infrastructure environments where heavier Western tanks would struggle. Against infantry, the Hago could be effective. It moved quickly, supported advances and was easy to maintain. But its thin armor and small gun left it hopelessly vulnerable once it encountered Allied tanks. American crews learned quickly that even heavy machine guns could penetrate it. The Hago's real weakness wasn't poor engineering, it was changing battlefields. What worked in China failed catastrophically in the Pacific. Still, Japan had no replacement in sufficient numbers, so the Hago fought on until the very end of the war. It became a symbol of doing too much with too little. Type 97 Chiha. The Type 97 Chiha was Japan's primary medium tank during World War II and, on paper, a major step forward. It offered better mobility, improved crew layout and greater reliability than earlier designs. For infantry support, it was solid and dependable. But the Chiha carried a critical flaw: its main gun. Designed for infantry suppression, it lacked the armor-piercing power needed for tank-on-tank combat. When Chihas met American M3 Lees and later M4 Shermans, the outcome was brutally one-sided. Japanese crews fought with determination, often using ambush tactics and terrain to compensate, but doctrine and equipment were working against them. The Chiha was not a bad tank, it was simply built for the wrong kind of war. It represents Japan entering World War II with yesterday's assumptions. Type 97 Chiha Kai Shinhodo Chiha. The Shinhodo Chiha was Japan's answer to battlefield reality. After encountering better-armed Allied tanks, Japanese engineers redesigned the Chiha with a new turret and a high-velocity 47mm gun. This finally gave Japanese crews a weapon capable of defeating early Allied armor under the right conditions. In ambushes and short-range fights, the Shinhodo could be deadly. Against lighter Allied tanks, it performed respectably. But its thin armor remained unchanged and numbers were limited. This tank shows Japan learning fast but too late. It was a genuine improvement, and in skilled hands it could fight back, but it never appeared in sufficient quantity to alter the balance of power. The Shinhodo Chiha stands as Japan's most balanced wartime tank. Type 1 Chihi. The Type 1 Chihi marked a quiet revolution in Japanese tank design. For the first time, Japan emphasized welded armor, radios as standard equipment, and better crew coordination. It was faster, better protected, and more modern than anything Japan had fielded before. But the timing was cruel. Production was limited, resources were scarce, and by the time the Chihi was ready, Japan was already on the defensive. Most units were held back for the anticipated invasion of the home islands, an invasion that never came. The Chihi never faced American tanks in combat, but it shows what Japanese armor could have become under different circumstances. It represents potential trapped by industrial reality. Type 3 Chinu. The Type 3 Chinu was Japan's first tank designed specifically to fight American armor. Armed with a 75mm gun, it finally gave Japanese crews the firepower to penetrate an M4 Sherman from combat ranges. On paper, this was a serious improvement and a necessary one. But the Chinu arrived in 1944, when Japan's industrial base was collapsing. Only a small number were produced and none ever left the home islands. These tanks were held back to defend Japan against an Allied invasion that never happened. The Chinu was not revolutionary, but it was competent. It proved that Japanese engineers understood the problem. They just ran out of time, resources, and opportunity. The Chinu represents a solution that arrived after the war was already lost. Type 94 TK. The Type 94 tankette was never meant to fight other tanks. It was designed for reconnaissance, supply escort and infantry support in colonial conflicts. Small, lightly armored, and armed with a machine gun or light cannon, it was closer to an armored tractor than a true tank. In China, it performed adequately. Against poorly armed opponents, it provided mobility and fire support. But in real combat, its thin armor offered almost no protection. Even small arms fire could be dangerous. By World War II standards, the Type 94 was hopelessly obsolete, yet Japan continued to use it because there was nothing else available in sufficient numbers. It reflects Japan's early belief that speed and presence mattered more than protection. Type 97 Taku. The Type 97 Taku was an improved successor to the Type 94, intended primarily for reconnaissance and scouting. It was faster, slightly better protected, and armed with a small cannon that gave it limited offensive capability. In its intended role, the Taku worked reasonably well. It could scout ahead of infantry, patrol wide areas, and operate where larger tanks could not. But as the war dragged on, it was increasingly thrown into roles it was never designed for. Against Allied tanks or anti-tank weapons, the Taku stood no chance. Many were dug in as static defenses, used as immobile pillboxes in desperate last stands. The Taku shows how light vehicles were forced into heavy combat by necessity, not design. Type 98 Kunai. The Type 98 Kunai was meant to replace the aging Hago light tank. It had better armor, improved suspension, and higher speed, addressing many of the earlier tank's weaknesses. On paper, it was exactly what Japan needed. In reality, production delays and material shortages crippled the program. Only small numbers were built, and most units never saw combat. Meanwhile, outdated Hagos continued fighting on the front lines. The Kunai arrived at a moment when Japan could no longer afford gradual improvements. Incremental upgrades were no longer enough against heavily armed Allied forces. The Kunai represents a familiar theme in Japanese armor development: the right idea, executed too slowly. Type 2 Kudo. The Type 2 Kudo was a further evolution of Japan's light tank concept, featuring an improved gun and better mobility. It was designed to give reconnaissance units a bit more firepower while retaining speed and simplicity. But by the time the Kudo appeared, the battlefield had changed completely. Allied tanks were larger, better armored, and supported by overwhelming air power. A lightly armored Japanese tank, no matter how refined, could not survive. Only a handful were produced, and their impact was negligible. The Kudo wasn't a bad design, it was simply irrelevant to the realities of late-war combat. It stands as a reminder that refining the wrong concept won't win the right war. Type 2 Kami. The Type 2 Kami was one area where Japanese tank design genuinely excelled. Developed by the Imperial Japanese Navy, this was a true amphibious tank, not a modified land vehicle forced into the role. Detachable pontoons gave it excellent seaworthiness, allowing it to land directly from the ocean and support beach assaults. Once ashore, the pontoons could be jettisoned, turning the Kami into a conventional light tank. In island fighting, it performed well against infantry and light defenses. But like most Japanese tanks, its armor was thin, and its gun was inadequate against Allied armor. The Kami arrived too late to influence Japan's early offensives, and later it was mostly used defensively. Still, it stands out as one of Japan's most purpose-built and successful tank designs of the war. Type 3 Kachi. The Type 3 Kachi was an ambitious expansion of the Kami concept. Larger, heavier, and better armed, it was designed to support amphibious landings and island reinforcement operations over long distances. Its hull was boat-shaped, allowing it to travel extended distances at sea, and it carried a more powerful gun than its predecessor. On paper, it was impressive. In practice, Japan's strategic situation meant it was almost never used as intended. By the time the Kachi entered service, Japan was no longer conducting amphibious offensives. Most were used as static coastal defenses, negating their primary advantage. The Kachi represents engineering ambition overtaken by strategic collapse. Type 1 Hoai. The Type 1 Hoai was designed as a close support tank, not a tank killer. Its short-barreled 75mm gun was intended to fire high-explosive shells at infantry positions, bunkers, and field fortifications. Against infantry, the Hoai was effective. Against Allied tanks, it was nearly helpless. Its armor offered limited protection, and its gun lacked the penetration needed to survive tank combat. Only small numbers were produced, and the Hoai never played a major role in the war. It reflects Japan's continued emphasis on infantry support even as Allied forces increasingly relied on armored breakthroughs. The Hoei shows how Japan kept preparing for the kind of war it wanted to fight, not the one it was facing. Type 4 Chitu. The Type 4 Chitu was Japan's most advanced tank design of World War II. For the first time, it matched Allied medium tanks in armor protection and firepower, armed with a high-velocity 75mm gun capable of destroying Shermans head-on. It was larger, heavier, and more complex than earlier Japanese tanks, marking a clear shift in design philosophy. Japanese engineers had finally closed the technological gap. But only 2 Chitu tanks were completed before the war ended. Fuel shortages, bombing, and material scarcity made mass production impossible. The Chitu is one of history's great what-ifs, proof that Japan solved the technical problem, but lost the industrial war. Type 5 Chiri. The Type 5 Chiri was intended to take Japanese armor even further. Larger than the Chitu, it featured thicker armor, a powerful main gun, and experimental concepts like an auto-loading system. This tank was designed to face the latest Allied armor and fight on equal terms. But Japan no longer had the factories, fuel, or time to bring it into production. Only one incomplete prototype was built. The Chiri never fired a shot in anger, but its design shows that Japanese tank engineering had finally reached modern standards just as the war was ending. Type 2 Chianai. The Type 2 Chianai was a competing design developed alongside the Chihi. It emphasized easier production and simpler construction, sacrificing some performance for manufacturability. In theory, this made sense for a resource-strapped nation. In practice, it was rejected in favor of the more advanced Chihi. Only prototypes were built. The Chianai never entered service, but it highlights the internal struggle within Japanese industry whether to build simpler tanks in numbers or better tanks in small quantities. That question was never truly resolved. Type 3 Chinu Kai. The Type 3 Chinu Kai was an improved version of the Chinu, intended to refine armor layout and combat effectiveness. It represented incremental improvement rather than a new breakthrough. But by 1945, incremental change was meaningless. Japan lacked fuel, train crews, and air cover. No tank, no matter how improved, could alter the strategic situation. The Chinu Kai never entered mass production, closing the story of Japanese wartime tank development on a quiet, almost tragic note. It symbolizes the final reality of Japanese armor in World War II: understood, improved, and ultimately irrelevant in a war decided elsewhere.